30 more seconds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's starting.
Scrolling.
Yeah, just wait for it to finish.
Just give me the give me the thumbs up.
Just make sure it's a that's what, just make sure it's a
Yes.
You can-
I'd like to call to order, the regular Board of Education meeting Tuesday, November 14th, 2023 at exactly 6:30. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, start with Shelley, please.
Vinnie Cadabella.
Stephanie Miller.
Debbie Sherman.
Mike Kuchar.
Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, we can move on to minutes.
Motion to approve the September 26th regular Board of Education minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on those? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries.
Motion to approve November 8th special joint Board of Education Board of Selectmen minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes, changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Our favorite thing to do, OHS student recognition.
And I'm gonna
You
invite our science teacher here, all the way back to Boston, who contacted me several months ago and wanted to recognize a number of our students for being recognized for accomplishments dealing with the National Chemistry Olympiad, as well as being a finalist. So
Awesome.
Ms. Blaza, can you come up here and join me? Yep. And we always love to recognize our students, and this is something that we want to schedule on a night that we have the high school administration here to make the presentation. Awesome.
Okay, so hi, I'd like to recognize these students who chose to participate in the New Haven section of the National Chemistry Olympiad competition. It wasn't anything they had to do, it was not part of any clubs that they were doing. They just did it because they love to learn, and it like warmed my heart, and we had a lot of fun getting ready for it. We met for several weeks at like 6 or 6:15 in the morning, once a week. Mr. Hibbert let us into the school, so we would get in, we'd have breakfast, and we would practice, and then we went up to Quinnipiac and competed. And we actually had one person who qualified to take the next, like the national exam for that. So without further ado, and by the way, just a PS, all these people pass their AP Chem exams with 3s, 4s, and 5s. Okay, Zach Ford.
Oh, pretty good at the end.
If you want to push the picture right now, you can. Yeah.
I'll be that parent.
Abby Zerlo.
Oh, I won't be that parent.
Sandra Shaw. Morgan Brumico. Sam Cook. By the way, Sam is doing her capstone, making science videos for some elementary school classes. And last but not least, this is the student who scored high enough on the local exam to take the national exam. And she sat for several hours, right, at Quinnipiac to do this. And Kat Oster. And one person's not here is Karen Rice.
Anthony, shouldn't you be in it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's see you take it.
Well, you could be in it.
Yep.
Thank God you guys have me. Last time, you probably need to scooch over. You
I
can
think I
get
can
on.
get you off.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take a couple. Oh, Dr. Miller, you looked away. Awesome, great.
Everybody gets that?
Out of the way.
Students on
All right,
always looking
fantastic.
when
Yeah, they are.
you take the time to really invest and time and your energy and you're successful. You could be out having fun in evenings and weekends as you apply your studies to chemistry. It's an amazing feat that you participated in this and love, and it's amazing that you take the time to really mentor and coach these students and really help them develop a love for science. Thank you.
Nice job. You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to.
Thank you.
Were those all the recognitions that we have?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'll do that. Like Swan Song or what?
Mhm. You see the smile on my face? It's such a big smile. I'll try not to. Yeah, really. Now you're all over in the corner.
So we don't need a lot of states for remote.
Well, when you have recognition, yeah. And then when are you doing the fall sports?
I have to talk to Joe to schedule that.
Okay, so that was amazing. Next on our agenda, audience of citizens, is there anyone who would like to address the board? You can go to the podium if you like, or you can talk from your seat. Whatever you feel comfortable with. I can't see who's behind Anthony. Oh, hi, it's you. Congratulations. So it doesn't seem like anyone wants to talk. Is there any correspondence, Mike?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. So attributes of a graduate, I believe that's OHS and OMS. Are you doing a tag team type thing?
And invite our two principals up. We've been speaking about the attributes of the graduate for several years now. This past summer, the administrative team really coalesced the work that the teachers had done during the year to develop the rubrics and how to apply the attribute graduate to the student learning, to assess student learning. And what we wanted to do this year is to highlight each of the attributes to the board and to the general public and what they mean and how they are being applied at each grade level. So what we've done is we've set a schedule for the year where two principals, each meeting will come and present a specific attribute, what it means at their grade levels, and showcase some student work or voices of students through that. So the first presentation that we're making this evening through the cycle is a joint presentation from the high school and middle school on one specific attribute. And then the next meeting will be the two elementary school presenting. And that as the year progresses, we'll be interchanging the schools and they'll be paired up in different ways. So.
How many attributes are there?
Is that quiz or test?
Well, just if you're spreading it out, 5, okay, you're spreading it out.
Okay.
Yeah. I see, are you waiting for Rob to put it up?
Yeah.
that you can't get it to change? Who's our IT guy right here? Mike, you are, aren't you?
I'm on vacation.
Uh,
There you go.
You can start, mine are,
Yeah.
which does its first.
So, well, thank you for having us tonight. We're talking about the critical thinker, which is one of the 5 attributes of the graduate. Besides critical thinking, we have collaborative learner, effective communicator, empowered learner, and productive citizen. So our talk is on the critical thinker. On this slide, there are 4 subsections of critical thinking that we look at. In fact, these 4 subsections are part of a rubric that we have that we use to assess this particular attribute at the high school, and the other schools use it as well. So detecting bias, as an example of that I shared with the board, some student work. This one is the first one. Second one is persevering through complex tasks. Given something that is intellectually rigorous and challenging, how do you work your way through it? Determining when you make mistakes, if you make a mistake, how do you correct that? So on and so forth, using logic and analysis of both your work and say an exemplar, really an accurate piece. And what's the difference between the accurate piece and what you create? That's something I also provided for you guys. The third one is constructing or justifying or refuting arguments. I give you an example of a U.S. history class preparing for a Socratic seminar. Where you're given a point of view, you have to argue for it or against it. Whether the United States should be an imperialist nation or not. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to be able to argue. And then the last, using research strategies, developing theories about real world issues, and can you apply what you've learned to an issue. I'll give you an example of our engineering class constructing a state traffic. So the next page takes those 4 subsections of critical thinker, and this is a type of rubric that we can use for the kids so they would know if they mastered this or
Anthony, do you have debate club?
we have one, but
You
we don't have
used
any
to.
kids that sign
have
up
no
for
kids
it. We
in
don't have any, but I did debate, no problem. I knew you guys wanted to see me present, but so we don't currently have one active,
Okay,
but
we have in the
one's on
past,
the books.
just because there's not interest or
Right,
whatever.
this time, I'm not sure. Because that would certainly tie into.
Yeah, that's what I said.
example. Absolutely. So this is just for your reference. Each of the attributes has a rubric that was put together by a team of teachers and administrators last year. And have representatives from each of the 4 schools to get part of it. You can go to the next slide, Dr. Miller. And I have given you just some hyperlinks to each of these attributes of student work that we did this school year in the building. And I'm going to go over it quickly. You don't have to click on each link. I know that the board had a chance to look at it. And some people have to get access, but the first example was of an English 10 class, detecting bias on the part of an author in using their craft. How might the author's craft influence you as you to a particular issue or a particular position? Being aware that authors use this craft to influence readers, specific critical skill in and of itself. And that was an English class taking a look at a book, but it can be applied to nonfiction. Second one, I had to ask for a lot of help from the teacher. This was a math class, and it's actually a math modeling class, which is, if you think about the highest rigor class to mid-levels to sort of the classes for the masses, this is this regular math class for 12th graders. You don't have to be in calculus to try to solve problems like this. So a lot of the kids in the 12th grade would take this, and they're just given a prompt. Given this game, is it fair? It could, and most of the kids think it is. And the point is that it's not. The kids have to figure out mathematically why it's not. The probability is not equal, and they're shocked by the end of the process to find that it's not fair. The results aren't. So they have to think about it. They give their answer to the teacher gives them feedback. The next day they get model exemplar answers. What's the difference between what I came up with versus what someone who solved it correctly came up with? Why did this person get it right, well, I got it wrong, because you're thinking about math, it's pretty interesting, to me, anyway. But I didn't understand it. The high school kids can't. Third one was the US history, which is Socratic seminar. The last one is our principles of engineering class. Real world application using software to create a model thing. Basically, a Wolverine view. So I don't know if you have any questions for the school or the kids did up like. Yes,
I do, on number 3,
yep,
American imperialism,
yep,
and I read over the thing there, Teddy Roosevelt, you know. Cuba, Spanish, 1812. McKinley. All those things is that. I guess with all the things that occur in the world today, sure. I don't think debating Teddy Roosevelt is something that there are critical things that they could be talking about. You know, you got the Silk Road, China. You know, you have Cuba that is dominated by China. You have Venezuela. You have many current things. Okay, that this is good background history. That's not worth debating because it's done.
I would disagree with you.
You know,
I'll tell you what. This is the period of time that we're studying. And that information, it can be applied to, say, post-World War II, the Cold War, First World, Second World, Third World, American imperialism, developing world, competing with the Soviet Union, and applied to modern things today. But that particular period of time is the period of American imperialism expansion. Is work.
we're living today. And the world is being controlled. You know, we had the Second World War, okay, you know, which my father went through, post-traumatics and all those things, going through the Second World War, the imperialism of Russia going into the Poland, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, you know, the Berlin Wall. Those are much more current, and that's imperialism. You know, you have China building and taking over countries which are now bankrupt and can't pay China back. I mean, I think that's a more lively debate to bring people into. That's the thing. What Teddy Roosevelt did and his goals back then, he was the Secretary of the Navy, resigned and went to swamps, you know, San Juan Hill, you know. It's, you know, we all got things that we wanted to see. The country was booming, steel was being made, ships were steel, you know, there's all kinds of things that are there that lead up to something. But we live today, and you can see today the problems that we have with the lack of good firm education of what happened just 75 years ago. You know, that we can have this kind of turmoil going on and be afraid to express it. If you want to talk about imperialism, let's get today, get the kids up to date, so when they walk out into the world, they know what they're getting into. Teddy Roosevelt, in the name for teddy bears, isn't going to help them.
Can I just interject something? And Anthony, you can jump in here. Maybe an understanding of what a Socratic seminar is, because it's the skill. I understand what you're saying as far as the content, but the skill is very sequential, that you are to build upon these questions to finally get somewhere. So I see your point of using real world, but you have to also remember that this is a skill that they're using that as.
I knew that would come up, so
Oh.
I did some research on that.
Okay,
That-
what, the Socratic method?
Yes.
Okay,
And there's 4 different methods of it, okay? And there's the old method and there's the new method, okay? So there's different ways that they can do it. But the end result of that is to come up with a consensus. Because I
Okay.
decided to look up the word consensus, okay, which is a skill that we learn in business versus the debate here of getting there. Consensus is to control the event and get the answer that you want, okay? Maybe a lot of talk, but it's still the moderator control it. And based on the latest version of this and how you go through it, how it's handled, determines how that debate will come out. So I'm not concerned about the debate. I love the debate. I'm just saying that,
like use more modern material.
yeah,
Can I just
Yeah,
also
go
just
ahead.
interject? They also have like a set of standards. They have to teach using. And those standards do involve like some of that content as well. So the teachers are trying to use skills that are going to engage the student to teach that content. So it's not your typical 20 years ago lecture style. So there is material they do have to cover, which in US history. And yes, we want them being able to apply the skills of what goes into conducting a Socratic seminar, with being able to do that and use that in real world application and being able to engage with information. And they may engage with information in different, like a civics course or something like that, but there is material they have to cover in a US history course.
But if you go back to the first thing, where you're talking about techniques, relating themes and stuff, okay? So if you read the questions in blue here, that's a perfect example of how something is presented. It's, is American imperialism even justified? Okay, so, you're already guilty of it. You're not gonna debate it. You're just gonna take and say, well, maybe I can justify it. We had good steel, Congress went to the West Coast, all that kind of stuff, so there's, but the question is, when you read them, go right back to the very first technique. So if you don't take number one, you're gonna get screwed number three.
Yeah, I also think, when you look history, they'll say history repeats itself, right? And that's part of the reason why the standards are the way they are. And we do want teachers to introduce current event topics and so forth, but that is not the meat of the standards in the curriculum. It is US history, and while it is heavy on the skill side, there's also the content piece that goes with US history, covering certain eras and time periods.
But I will say,
Okay.
I do agree with you a little bit though. And so.
They were having
Yes,
the.
and
You're having a Socratic seminar right now.
unfortunately, I teach this subject, so I would skip the Gilded Age second. But but I know people like the TV show. The point I guess that I would make is that, this happens to be the period of history that they're studying. But most research would indicate that kids will learn about these things if you can connect something to, say, background knowledge. Obviously, they weren't alive back then; they're alive now. So you can, as a teacher, make parallel explanation to, okay, in this particular time, we're talking the late 1890s, and 1800. And then you could say, like I suggested, this is very similar to what happened post World War II, when we were one of the two superpowers battle, really for world domination for economic and political control. And you could say, and then look today, you have all sorts of issues with imperialism that are coming up. Should Puerto Rico be a state, for as an example? That has all sorts of political science ramifications. What type of electorates do they have, presidential elections, etc. So there's certainly a lot of stuff that you could connect to this. And I think this was one of the discussions that we had with staff when I asked them to produce some work for me that I could share with you guys. I'm asking you to do this because I know you do these things, right? Eventually we'll get to a place where it's embedded in the curriculum, where, I'm sure that's something that long-term planning is going to be. So in, say, a global studies class, when would a student expect to have these different attributes built in with, and what type of assignments are going to be? I think right now, I've only been for a couple of years, now 1.5 years. They're doing these things because it's been a part of their work for a few years, but not institutionalized, codified. That's where you might see some of the connections that you're suggesting apply. So how can you make this work with kids? I know you're studying this particular era. Is there any connections to what's going on? And that may be something that many kids would then be able to say, well, wow, history does repeat.
Okay, well, yeah, they stated my concerns. I'm fine. Can I join the class?
I was gonna.
Why don't you teach
actually
it?
Say that exact same thing, Anthony, I read, kind of a scary article, but I didn't finish today exactly making that point. Without getting too political, it was taking some of Trump statements and aligning them with previous Hitler statements. And, no matter where you're coming from, anyway, that was exactly the point I was gonna make, that, where's that saying? We don't learn from history, we're destined to repeat it. Yeah, to repeat it. I know that's not exactly the case. So I think it's important to, learn from history, but also connect it to.
And I think the point to me, that should be emphasized through this conversation is this attributes we're talking about live above the content itself, live above the curriculum. So regardless of what curriculum we're laying in front of students, whether it be in kindergarten or seniors, when it become learning chemistry, biology, or social studies, or language arts. The skill of being a critical thinker is something we're expecting students to be able to do in all those areas. And what we've shown you is just a snapshot of how that skill is being done and assessed in a couple content areas, not in every area. You just saw an example of. And what you're talking about here is the application of critical thinking, analyzing how the world is constructed and why things are happening. And there are a number of different ways that skill could be applied, regardless of how that content is laid out in front of the student.
So lively debate. Thank you for contributing. Anyone else questions for Anthony? No. All right, Sylvia.
Okay, so when we think about the middle school, we have to think a little bit about backwards design, because when we think about the attributes of the graduate, and next meeting, you're gonna see from the 3 to 5 level and the K2 level, like how do you take these attributes of the graduate, which are the skills that we believe that students have when they walk across the stage at graduation, and then dial them back to each of the previous schools, right? So we've been thinking a lot at the middle school, like how would we do that? How would we showcase the progression of these skills in the 6-8 level? So the first thing is that our students are pretty visual overall. So we have this hanging in each of our classrooms, right? So in each of our classrooms, we have each of the attributes there. And then if you go, and thank you to Ellen, because I had the vision, she created it. So
That's good teamwork.
yes, it is. That's often how it works. So, and so the next slide. So then we thought about, okay, we have these 5 attributes. We have these content areas in our school. What makes the most sense in our building to really track the progress of how the students progress through the attributes? So what we decided was we were going to divide the attributes up among content areas. So ELA is focusing, and that's not to say the other areas aren't doing all of the attributes, but for our purposes, it made the most sense to see the progress in content areas. So ELA is focusing on critical thinker, math empowered learner, social studies productive citizen, science collaborative learner, and the unified arts effective communicator. And so then these particular attributes are also hanging in those content area classrooms, right? So we have all of the attributes, this is what we want to see. And then in this particular area, this is where we're going to hone in a little bit, okay? So we took So we took this idea of, critical thinker, and then we looked at the 4 indicators and what that means for the 6-8 level. And in terms of our progress monitoring, like students are self-assessing in each, so we've kind of developed a protocol in each of the content areas. So the first part of the protocol is that students are self-assessing. I think that's the next slide. And then the teachers are monitoring the growth through targeted assignments. And then the teachers are conferencing with students, right? So the students are self-assessing, saying on the rubric, here's where I think I am as a critical thinker right now. And they have to, it's interesting because in 6th grade, right, they have to look at the language of the indicators and be able to talk to them through what we have on our rubrics is a little different than the high school, is we have I can statements that go underneath the rubric. So that's more student-friendly language. And so students they're starting to assess themselves and can, how much can I do this, or I can do this, or I can do this under the rubric. And then the teachers are conferencing with the students and saying, yeah, on this particular assignment, I saw this, I saw you emerging. And what you have to remember is in the 6-8 realm, if these are attributes and skills we're expecting them to be proficient in when they're in 12th grade, they should still be pretty emerging when they're in middle school, right? We're not going to see a bunch of exemplaries unless Although some of the students you'll see in the video, their effective communicating skill, I was very proud of them, being interviewed one-on-one with the principal, and they were great, so. But what we did when it came to student work was, I had talked to the teachers and I was saying, like, what's the best way for us to showcase our students as critical thinkers? And so they were saying, well, we have these assignments, but I think that it's going to get lost in translation if we try and give you a copy of our assignment. And so we talked about it, and they said, we came to the conclusion of, well, what if you interview some students? What if you just talk to them about the work that they're doing and you ask them questions? And so that's what we did. So teachers sent down a student or two, and I asked them questions about the assignment they had in class, and really through their answers, they were demonstrating how critical thinking is being taught in their particular class, in their particular lesson. So this is just a little video. Again, I had the vision, I interviewed the students, and then Ellen put the video together. Well, while he's getting sound, I did reach out to each of these parents and, talk to them about.
Tell me a little bit about the
They
assignment
were
that Ms.
all-
Baker,
Oh, good. It's coming out of here.
Change to on here. See how loud that gets.
Well, while he's
Gave
getting
the
sound, I
class.
did reach
So
out to
Ms.
each of
Baker
these
assigned
parents
us,
and, talk to them
after
about.
Tell me a little bit about the
we
assignment
have
that
all-
Ms.
have the meeting
Baker,
in-
project, from either like
It's coming out of here.
Change to here. I did, but not live.
Well, while he's
Gave
getting
the
sound, I
class.
did reach out to each of
Baker
these
assigned
parents.
us,
Was everybody
and,
able to
talk
see it?
them about.
Did anybody put that in? Did you see it?
I fixed it.
I did. I looked at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So can you
What
tell me a
retirement
little bit
is-
about the
do that.
assignment that Ms. Baker gave the class?
So Mrs. Baker assigned us after the book one for the Murphys, we were doing like a project from either like the point of view from another character, or from maybe after the book, maybe another chapter, or maybe a flash forward to when Carly turns 25 and talks to Mrs. Murphy again.
Why did you decide to take Daniel's point of view?
Because Daniel is one of the Fosters, like siblings of Carly, and they have like they didn't really like each other at first,
Mm-hmm.
but then then afterwards they started to get along, and then that Daniel was like the other sibling that they started to get along. They finally started to have like a regular sibling relationship, even if they weren't like generally related.
So by showing the chapter from his perspective, what did you hope to accomplish?
I hoped to like show the point of view of Daniel from like him struggle like to show the struggles between like someone who just joined like the family.
Great. All right. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Taking on candy on
So
their
to
way out.
develop a theme statement, we take all of the evidence of the story. So in this case, A Long Walk to Water, we take the evidence and how the characters interact with their surroundings, each other, etc. And we essentially mix that together to create our theme statement.
Okay, great. And can you tell me how you got to your theme statement in particular?
So when I was finding my theme statement, I chose how the characters interacted with each other, their surroundings, their situations, the conflicts that are faced with them, and also what I felt the author was trying to convey to the readers through the message or through the story. And I put that together and I got my theme statement.
Great. Thank you, Avery.
We started developing a theme by finding a motif that has like commonly occurred in our story, and from there we went down like to the next 4 boxes and we found evidence that supported our motif, that was like good evidence and it wasn't just stuff that was thrown out there. And then from from there we found a theme that was that matched our evidence and our motif.
Great. And so how did you get to your theme statement when you're thinking about how it pushed you as a thinker and a learner?
I got to my theme statement by first finding a common motif and checking with Miss Sedella to make sure she agrees on it. And from there, I found evidence and went back into the book to find good evidence and make sure it was all correct before moving on to the last part, which was finding my theme. And at the end, I checked everything over with Miss Sedella.
Great. Thank you, Jordan. All right, so Brady, can you tell me a little bit about the fishbowl you took part in ELA?
So the fishbowl was basically a class discussion among our different ideas and opinions or viewpoints on the book Summer of the Mariposas, which we were reading. We had an inner circle of desks, and the kids sitting in the inner circle would discuss their different topics and ideas and opinions of the story. And then the kids on the outer circle would take notes, and if they wanted to join in to discuss, they would raise their hand, and we would take turns going between the circles so that everybody could discuss and had a chance to voice their opinion.
Great. What kept the discussion going in this fishbowl?
So in the fishbowl, the way the discussion kept going was that different people could have had different ideas, and that would really show how different people can interpret different things differently, and that it was almost like a constructive argument.
Great.
On how different opinions
and how do you think it pushed you as a learner or a thinker, this fishbowl?
So it really pushed me to think outside the box, and how not only small parts of the story affect it, but how every single part of the story affects the plot and everything, and how different viewpoints can be the same or different, but they both show a real idea.
Great. Thank you, Brady.
You're welcome.
So Callie, can you tell me a little bit about the fishbowl activity that you participated in your ELA class?
For the fishbowl activity, it was based off of chapters 1 through 11 in Summer of the Mariposas. And what we had to do was there was a box of questions, and there'd be one person that would pull them out, and you would read them off. And the people in the center, they were the center and the outside. The people in the center of the fishbowl, they would have to really think about how to answer in-depth answers for these questions. And the people on the outside would have to analyze the questions, and they would have to take notes on
Great.
these.
So how do you think this activity pushed you as a learner and a thinker?
This really pushed me as a learner and a thinker, because if you're on the inside, you really had to come up with original ideas and answers for these questions, and you really had to communicate together. If you're on the outside, you really had to analyze these questions and see if you agreed or disagreed with what the people said.
Great. Thank you, Callie.
You're welcome.
And I swear I didn't prompt them.
That's
I
a
had
nice
the
job. You did a nice job.
I had the questions, and I really wanted to see what they would be able to produce when I would ask them
Can you
the
tell me a little
question
bit about the assignment?
based on the work. Do you have any questions for?
Oh, nice job. It's nice to see the students. Any questions for Sylvia? Okay, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the hit parade, assessment report. I assume that's Eric. Eric, you're probably doing the next two, right?
Yes. He's doing the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, nice working with you. You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so I'll just kind of review overall, what was sent to you, and then, kind of any questions you guys have, just to kind of let you know where my head was at creating this. Being new in the district, I just wanted kind of, it's a starting point for me, obviously, and being able to dig through district data. Try to put in there all the different places, I collected the data from. So there's a few hours of just getting that information all in one place. So I see it as kind of, like I said, that starting place for me in the district as, you know, where are we at? And we can move forward, whether it's gonna be the same exact template year from year, but, or the same exact data every single time. But having all of this in one place. Obviously, whenever you're doing an assessment report, what's going well, what's not going well, which we'll get into in a few. And then the most important piece for myself and when I meet with teachers and other district leaders, it's asking questions. So data doesn't tell the whole story, but it should lead you to being able to ask questions, dig deeper. Obviously use it to set goals, but you know, also that big idea of asking, you know, why does it say this? You know, what are we doing to, you know, cause this? What are we doing to do better in this area? Some of the major challenges, I kind of put these in there as well, is we're in a transition period with a lot of assessments, which again is a huge issue, especially in that K-5 realm. Just using assessments for the first time is difficult in regards to understanding what the data means, trying to compare them to previous assessments, and what that tells us. So that definitely was a major challenge, trying to work with some companies to get some questions answered, which you know, we're honestly still waiting on some questions to be answered from some of the companies that we're working with. Another challenge is lack of trend data with some of the assessments, even iReady, which we've been using for a couple of years. You know, it's been 2 years, so you really don't have that trend data. That's why there's a difference in how some of the data is displayed. You know, not really doing line graphs with 2 years worth of data. So hopefully we can, you know, keep some consistency with some of these assessments over the next few years and actually get some of that trend data, which will help us kind of dig a little deeper and ask some different questions as well. I said before, some of the comparison issues like the iReady to the HMH, which is new. What exactly does that look like? You know, I think we saw in the HMH data, especially that kindergarten and first grade data, the HMH, which is the reading data, showed some very low scores with students that are at proficiency at the beginning of the year. Well, those numbers generally are not ever too high at the beginning of the year. I think if we look, it was on page 30, HMH was 13. The fact that it was 1 and 4 for kindergarten and first grade, that's one of the answers. I'm still waiting on the company to see if there was some sort of testing issue. So that was a challenge. It doesn't make sense to me that our DIBEL status we have, you know, even though it's only part of the HMH, you know, almost 30–40% of students showing above, at or above in certain areas on that assessment, not showing it there, as well as previous data with iReady shows that in the beginning of the year, even the first year of implementation with iReady, we were in the teens, low 20s with number of students who started the year, and this being 1 and 4 just doesn't make sense to me. The company is looking into it, as well as trying to give me some state comparison data, so we can also compare it to some other districts around the state who are using HMH. With them kind of branching out with the implementation of the Right to Read grant, they're still working through gathering some data from other people as well. So I'm eagerly awaiting that so we can compare that with other districts. But we'll also have other information show the validity of that. And then obviously IXL data at the high school is new as well. So again, a lot of new and different assessments that people are getting used to this year. I did forget to mention and not put in the beginning with the explanation. Numbers were rounded, just to make for ease of the data and keeping things somewhat simplified. And then when it comes to trend data with some of the state pieces, such as SBAC, you'll notice that the first year is 18–19, and then it does jump to 21–22, 22–23. That is because of those pandemic years. The state does have some of that data, and they do not actually, a lot of it's not presented on their trend data, or it's they put asterisks next to it just because of the different ways that schools were running during that time, whether they were all in, hybrid, not in, how they were testing. There was no consistency around the state with a lot of the testing. So, you know, there's not a lot of comparison going on with us versus state. You don't know how other students were tested, how they were in school at that time. So that is the reason why some of the data, the assessment years jump. Again, I put it in there so we can kind of see those pre-COVID years, where were we and what is going on now. The overall kind of trends, I did put in there in a summary piece. But we're going into year 3 with iReady. We are seeing a lot of positive trends with the number of students who are starting the year off at or above grade level, is increasing year over year, as well as the amount of students who make that jump to reaching their typical growth. SBAC growth that goes, Great Oaks, we definitely see some positive trends in their data, and I think it's that 5th grade ELA is up to 80% of that class was at or above grade level. And most of their scores are 15 to 20% higher than the state average. So we're definitely seeing some great of those SBAC scores at GOES. The PSAT 9 and SAT scores. So PSAT 9, obviously doing that 9th grade, and then the 11th grade SAT scores, where we made some huge jumps between last year, the previous year, and last year. I think it is the math, we jumped to over 30 points higher than the state average. So there are some definite gains in those areas that we're seeing in 9th and 11th grade when looking at the PSAT and SAT. And then our science scores overall, that NGSS assessment. Again, that's another one where, you know, we're 15 to 20% higher than the state in those scores, and that's taken in 3rd grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. So we're seeing that both at GOES, the middle school, and at the high school level. So definitely some positive trends with some of the data. The pieces that, you know, I kind of noted as further analysis, things to work on, things that the district has some goals that we hope to address. You know, while we do have some positive numbers out there, I think math overall, whether you look at the SBAC data or some of the iReady data, there's definitely a difference in the number of students at proficiency, kind of no matter what grade level you're looking at, in regards to where we're at versus the state. Obviously, the middle school kind of has those lowest numbers. When you look at 8th grade for both ELA and math, we see kind of a pretty drastic declining number over the years, while other grade levels are showing kind of that flattening trend, where we want to see more of an increase in these post-COVID years. But, you know, math overall is definitely an area of focus. Something where I told you we got to ask questions, it's that kind of PSAT 10. It's interesting because we kind of have those declining numbers in 8th grade. 9th grade, we see on the PSAT, both ELA and math, a jump with numbers showing higher than the state average. 10th grade, we seen for the past couple of years, we took a decline and then back up in 11th grade. You know, so definitely that's one of the questions I have that we're looking a little further into and looking at individual student data, trying to figure out what happened and why the down, up trend in those areas. And then at the end of the report, there's something called the performance index. And that is on page
33.
33. The performance index that comes from the state and those areas. So what I did is I put the ELA, the math, and the science in there, and you'll see that the target number the state gives is 75. There's a lot of statistical data that goes into coming up with that number, but the basis behind that is they're looking at growth year over year, as well as the difference between your students who are high needs, non-high needs. So, you know, obviously, you know, the goal is to trend higher and get to that target of 75 and above. And that's currently kind of where we're at. A lot of the work is going to be done in the curriculum writing that is going to take place beginning this year and moving forward. In regards to where we are with alignment, that process will help us kind of dig a little deeper into some of those grade levels where we see some inconsistencies. You know, why there's some data that shows 6th grade's going up and then all 7th and 8th grade goes down and then up in 9th. So that process will allow us to kind of ask those questions and dig a little deeper in those grade levels. The high dosage tutoring grant we got in math, which is 6 through 9, but it's going to be mostly at the middle school level. I'm interested to see what type of effect that has on math proficiency and scores, and the effectiveness of that. The state put the grant out there because the research shows that high dosage tutoring does work. So I'm very interested in running a successful campaign to improve math proficiency with middle school students, and then figuring out if it was so effective, what can we do to continue that program moving forward. And then just overall, the districtal implementation of UDL or Universal Design for Learning. We had an outside consultant provide some PD in the beginning of the year. I developed some professional development for middle school, high school we've done recently, as well as the lower levels. With the focus on making sure that lessons, there's access for all students, no matter what. Doesn't matter if you have an IB, 504, Reg Ed student, that access of lessons is available to all. So I don't know if there's specific questions about the data I can answer.
It's a good question. More, I know it's early and you're asking questions, so from your perspective, how do you approach where you have, like, let's use ELA 7 and 8, right? Assuming we're one place pre-pandemic, we're assuming they tanked, right? There other grades we're seeing decline back to pre-pandemic, so let's assume it's an incline up. On the ones that just keep going down, right? How do you think through that? Because you do have a different mix of kids, right? I just like foundation, how do you approach what's
So
how do you
right now so I'm using, because you got to remember this is last year's SBAC data, right?
Right.
So for math specifically, just because I know that's a concern across all the grade levels. So I dug a little deeper into the SBAC data, for example, and we pulled students who were near the bottom of that testing. We pulled that group and I worked with one of the interventionists for math at the high school. We kind of created a 9th grade list and we said, okay, if this was their SBAC grade, 8th grade, where are we at 9th grade? They have IXL, which is new. We're going to have grades and from their 9th grade class. And we're starting to triangulate some data to really figure out like where could that issue be? Because based on where the PSAT 9, like, doesn't make sense to be that low and then up. One thing we did find when I was working with the interventionist is we do have some of those students go to the tech schools. So I think we started to track, I don't have the numbers in front of me, it was in the 60s number of students that we wanted to track to see how they would do 9th grade this year. And I believe it was mid-20s or so of that group who was in the lowest performing SBAC was no longer in the high school because they went on to the tech school. So there is,
so that's the bump.
It could be. So it's a portion, but I think there's other things going on.
Right.
Because it's the ELA piece too. And listen, I'm not saying this as an excuse, there's a wide range of things outside of just the data. It's the motivation, of 7th and 8th graders sit down and take an SBAC test. They're not the most fun. The difference with iReady is, well, it's not fun. It's immediate. Hey, this is what you got, and the kid can see it right away. Like SBAC, you sit there in the spring, you're going to take this longer assessment, and all right, we're going to send it to you next year when you're in your next grade level in the fall. So it's like you have no clue how you did,
right.
And that sort of thing. We'll give you your detailed report later when we send it home with parents months from now. So there's that aspect which plays a role, but not to the point of we should be where we're at.
So you're starting with the lower, picking apart and working, triangulating, trying to get the root cause.
Because I also want to see is that, the motivational piece is going to show up if the students were in that, let's say, bracket on SBAC in 8th grade, and in 9th grade, they're showing their math grade is up here, PSAT is up here. That lends itself to maybe it was more motivational thing. Like if they're that low there, but showing that they're on a grade level in 9th grade. So that's why we're kind of tracking a group to start that process of seeing what's going on. And then, like I said, the other piece is going to happen when we do the curriculum writing with K8 and being able to do some vertical alignment piece and just figuring out what is, why 8th grade. Maybe there's some gap pieces there we're also missing in regards to what's being taught right now.
You also have to take a look at assessments by themselves, tell you one piece of data. How else are the students doing in their classes? How are they doing on the interim assessments that we're doing, on the formative and the summative assessments that we're doing as part of the curriculum itself? How are they doing in IXL? How are they doing iReady? How are these other pieces? Are they all telling us a picture the student is not being successful, or is it just one particular assessment the students just are not motivated to take and they're having high success in other areas?
And just to add on to that, how many, when you look at some of the classes, and my boys went through the middle school and they were in both, they were twins, so they went through
two different color groups. Is it more important to understand the content? Or is it more important on compliance of doing your homework? And I'll put it this way. I had one who missed tons of homework assignments. I think at the end of the year, he had like something like 60 missing assignments, which is frightening because I was all over it. And he did well on the tests and he did well. And the other one did all of his homework assignments and tanked all of his tests and quizzes, didn't do well. They both had about the same grades and they go, how is it possible? Which one counts? Is it more about the test scores or the compliance of doing the homework? And I left middle school going, I don't know.
It should be the focus on what are students able to do when they're asked to use the skills and the content they've been taught independently and in a new situation. Like that is the best way to tell. So if those summative assessments you're talking about put a student that on their own had to use the content and the skills that they were taught in that situation, then that's going to be your best measure of did they get it or not. Not so much like the day-to-day homework piece, the day-to-day, because I'm not sure how that was graded, if it was graded more participation or correct or not correct.
It was completed. It was started
yes.
and completed,
Yeah.
whether it's
and that's where again, the curriculum writing, the focus, and when you get to the really crux of UDL and how do you increase engagement, it all goes back to that piece, right? How do we, we talked about attributes of a graduate. And the reason those are important is because, we want our students to be able to use the skills and information they have in a setting they may not be aware of that they're going to be in the future. And that's really the important piece of education now moving forward is we don't know what the most in-demand jobs are going to be 10 years from now. We have no clue. The jobs that are out now weren't out 20 years ago. Some of them, not all of them. But so how can we create, when we teach students those skills and the content, and put them in the situations to apply them in a way that is going to show the teacher that they really understood it.
I just want to clarify a statement in my head. Is that from 8th grade to high school, there's a shift. But you threw in a thing that some of the kids, it might be because some kids go to tech school.
Yeah.
I think he said the data, the students identified in 8th grade, 20 of them went off to tech school.
Or out of district. They're no longer part of the cohort.
So that's an explanation for the jump for smarter kids in high school.
It could be, I saw that information. It's not like a complete answer as to this is the reason why. They're saying one of the things we saw when we looked at here, the kids were tracking. When you look at 8th to 9th grade, you're not doing the exact same cohort anymore. So like now we got to look at what effect does that have on the scores, whether they went to the tech school, whether they went to out of district. There's a bigger disparity between the kids that we have in 8th grade to 9th grade than any other grade level.
And this past year, 8th grade into the current 9th grade, we had the largest number of students that left our school from a number of years that went to other schools outside of our
Not a lot.
It's a data point. When they go to the tech schools, they still take the standardized tests.
Yeah,
right?
and like I said, they
But-
may be
and
dealing.
Does it get incorporated from us as a district?
So, and it may be the same thing, like why 9th grade, was it a motivational issue? Do those students still have a 1 or on the SBAC? Like, no, they may have a 3 and they're in a situation where they're thriving. It doesn't mean that, people who are not good at math are going to move on and go somewhere else. It's just one of the things we've looked at that we're going to look further into.
No, the only thing I can say, I know at least 4 kids,
After
okay.
Shelley's next. Go ahead, Vic.
That went to tech school afterwards, okay, and one's a nurse, another one is a multi-spindle CNC machine and stuff like that, a lot of math and stuff like that, and another one is into tech for automotive electronics and stuff. I just find it a little bit disheartening. They can say, well, our scores improved because they left.
I'm just saying that
But
we're,
they left
yeah.
and they're excelling,
Mhm.
okay? They spend $20,000 and making $80,000, $100,000 making $20,000. So I just find it personally uncomfortable that that's
And listen, when we're looking
a data
yeah.
point.
When we're looking up the scores, it's when we're talking about what happens from 8th to 9th grade, though, all I'm saying is that piece of information changes. So we don't have, we're
Cohort
tracking
changes.
some of the students, we don't have the exact same students. So I agree, does the fact that a student doesn't do well in SBAC in 8th grade, is that gonna affect how much they're gonna make 15 years down the road, or affect what career they're gonna get into? No, but our job is to figure out what's going on in 8th grade that we can try to help out in that situation, improve the scores.
Well, I agree, you got to, because not everyone's, only 20 went to tech school. Okay, there's gonna be a good portion of the kids in the bottom of the bell curve that are just slog their way through high school and not get what they need. The problem is that somewhere along in, we already know in 6th to 8th grade, the math was disjointed.
Yeah.
It's that the problem is with the teaching and reaching the child that has the capabilities, because they leave. You know, I know many of my classmates, we sucked. We left, and we started businesses and made a buck.
I wasn't up the top of the SBAC scores either when I took them, but
Right.
it's not, I 100% agree with you. It's not a, hey, you know,
It's not an indicator.
these kids are here, it's indicator, it's, hey, we're tracking this many kids and we found out, oh, we now have to like cross off this many because they're no longer with the school. Whether they went to a tech school or went to another school or out of district or wherever, it's not a, hey, if you're not gonna do well in this, you're gonna go to this school. It's not that piece. I'm just saying that of the kids we were tracking, there's a portion of those that are no longer with us.
Shelley,
Well, I have a few questions, which I will take outside of the meeting. Maybe we can have a conversation separately, but a more global, sort of a generalized question is, and I think you alluded to it a little bit, is, and maybe you know more, I didn't find out enough when I did some preliminary research, but, you know, when you try to compare apples and oranges and bananas, it's hard to track them across. But have you found any kind of good tool that, you know, compares, you know, sort of what's assessed in SBAC versus iReady versus SATs, PSATs?
So iReady has a projection score, which I put on there. So if you go, like that is supposed to be, and it kind of gets a little convoluted, and I tried to put like an explanation in there, but, so there's like a typical goal in iReady, which iReady says your typical student will meet, and then there's a stretch goal, which is beyond obviously that typical, where if a student is below grade level, they need to hit this to start to catch up. So what they do is they give you a projection year to year of, hey, if your students reach, if all of your students reach this their typical growth goal, they should reach this on the state testing. If all of them, the problem is I couldn't, once you finish the year, so I have the information now, the projection goal doesn't show up from previous years. So I couldn't go back to see, hey, does it look like we matched it or not? So I'll have this year's data, next year's data, and we'll be able to see if that's close or not. To determine, I have my hesitations because again, it's a different assessment. I think it's supposed to be just some sort of estimation. But like it says here in 22-23 that if students meet their typical, we have about 60% of our students meet the typical growth goal. So we should be in that 60% range. We're obviously not there. So like I don't see the correlation. But that's 1 year of information. I'd like a little more before I say it doesn't at all. And there's also a lot of other platforms out there that work with, you know, SAT and so forth that, you know, there's vendors who call all the time to do it. Whether it's how accurate it is and how much it costs versus what's the benefit of actually doing that. You know, I'm not sure about that piece. I think the focus, we have a lot of curriculum to write. We have the district initiative with attributes of the graduate. I think focusing on kind of the high quality instruction and making sure that's in all the curriculum is where the focus should be.
Good, Jeff. I just have a general question. As you've gone through this data, how much work do you anticipate needs to be done in alignment? Right? Or do you think that is a possible you know, area that we're not, you have to have your sequence and your scope and sequence, and it needs to be in line. I mean, if the kids are not teaching to the test, it's not the same as alignment. But if they're going to be assessed on a skill in March and it's in our curriculum for May, then they're gonna bomb in March. So do you have an opinion on that at this point? Or are you still kind of discovering?
Yeah, in agreement, I don't agree with teaching to the test, right?
Right.
So we want to make sure that, that we have alignment in regards to what's happening one grade level to the next and
Right.
so forth, and we build upon
Right.
those skills.
So that would be in the curriculum.
Would it, yes, would a part of it be like, you always go back to when we had, the MAP assessment, is there a part of it where, hey, they haven't really learned this part yet and they have to take it a month early? Like, yes, that's a part of it. Is that enough to say, well, that's the reason why, these scores are down around 30%? Like, no, that's
Okay.
not a reason why it's that low. I think, the work we have a curriculum to do, like, there's a lot of work. So to have a district goal, we're talking K-12 ELA, K-8 math, that's a lot of work. And, I think any curriculum director in the area is going to tell you it's not, just writing and putting it out year one and saying, hey, it's perfect and now we're ready to go. It's a process. So curriculum writing is part of that process, but it's also, how do we use that curriculum? Like, are we constantly going back and vetting to make sure the assessments are telling us what they need to tell us? Are we going back and making sure we're providing feedback after each unit? Did we get to everything, or do we constantly miss something year after year? Or, hey, this says we have to be done in 6 to 8 weeks, but we always take this last topic and have to do it in 2 days because we never make it in time.
Right.
So it's having the systems in place to review what's being done,
Mhm.
to use the data to figure out where to ask the questions and go back into that curriculum to figure out, what revisions need to change or need to be made. That's why I don't agree with that. Write it, put it away, and we'll come back in 5
Right.
to 7 years and
Right.
take a look. I think,
That doesn't work.
when we do write it, it is gonna be something where, it has to be looked at every year. What's
Right.
working, what's not working. And, honestly, any good curriculum is gonna have small revisions, here or there. It's, the way this world moves, how fast it moves. I don't think there's anything you can create and say it's good for a number of years and move forward with it.
Okay, good, thank you. Anybody else, any further questions? No, thank you so much. And now we'll move on to the curriculum and instruction goals update.
So just a few updates. I know previously there was the 3069 when I first got here, the subcommittee. I think when I was here for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at that point.
2 days.
7 days,
yeah.
actually.
So just looking at just a more comprehensive picture, clearer picture of a lot of the major goals going on in the district. And obviously there's a little more than this here or there, but just to kind of clarify, because the 30/60/90, there was a lot of the piece actually had to do with curriculum writing. So instead of having that as most of the document, just that first goal of obviously a lot of the work I'll be doing is getting the curriculum piece up and running. Yes, we do have curriculum out there, but it's identifying what curriculum does need to be revised and what needs to happen now. Obviously, the district goal is K-12 ELA and K-8 math. So at this point, we have adopted a curriculum template. The district previously used the universal backwards design called UBD template. So we adopted basically the version 2, the most up-to-date template. So that process is done. And at this time, it is just working with building principals. I've been in schools talking about the curriculum writing process, what it's going to entail. So we can start that after the holidays. The big hang up is obviously with new programming with K-12 ELA. It just didn't make sense to start writing curriculum right away until the teachers had some comfortableness with the programs that are being used. So with that and the fact that we're adopting a new curriculum piece, that training is going to start again after the holiday and work throughout the rest of the school year and into the summer. There is those first 2 goals. One is the actual create the template and how are we going to review and update it, and then second is actually write the specific curriculum. We move forward to the TVAL plan that's going to have to be created for the district. So every district in the state, TVAL is basically the teacher evaluation plan, and every district in the state has to create a new plan for next year. So the past couple of years with COVID, the pandemic, there's been what's called flexibilities where it's been not every district loosey-goosey, but it's been kind of like, you know, it was, hey, get what you need to have done, and there's a lot of plans out there that are not you know, formalized. So the state is having districts go back and kind of formalize under these new guidelines. So Monday, I was at a full day training in Cheshire. I have another full day training Thursday for PDEC guidance. PDEC is our district committee that is going to be working on TVEL. So it's basically creating the plan for teacher evaluation. What is the district identify as high quality instruction, building support in for staff, and then obviously that focus on how do we know what's working, student centered piece. So we have to create a plan for that, which is going to be a lot of work. That is going to be most of the second half of this year, working with the PDEC committee and creating that.
So I just have a question. So does that mean that, are you using seed? I mean,
So districts have to align to a set of standards. So we use
that we're in
CPT rubric, the Connecticut
Okay.
rubric for teaching. We're most likely going to stay with that. Other districts, there's Danielson, Marzano, Marshall. So it has to be aligned to one of those set of standards. But the state is allowing for some innovation, I guess, and creativity. So you can't make up your own. You don't have to use the rubric in its entirety, but whatever you use for evaluating teachers and what high quality instruction looks like has to be based off a set of accredited standards.
So what does the evaluation look like now? I mean, it used to look like, you know, depending on how many years you were in, you had formal observations, or if you know, or you had just 10-minute and there was a template in a software that is, are you still?
Yes.
Yes,
that's
So the
correct.
district's
It'll be done that way this
There's
year.
still gonna be, this year it's all like that.
Okay.
And there's still gonna be, the process is still gonna be similar, where there's still gonna be meetings with your evaluator, coming up with goals for the year. But I think previously, you know, the focus was all about, you know, that testing data, and I was like, I wanna move my kids here to here. The
Right.
focus is shifting towards, no, it's what high quality instruction are you doing in the classroom, which will lead to that. So the focus is gonna be more on that aspect of it. And the state wants to, you know, districts to kind of get creative to lessen the burden with the paperwork piece and make it more about a continuous loop of feedback and
More about
and
coaching.
instruction and so forth. So what does that look like? And not so much. And when we first started the process, I remember some of the uploads at the end of the year were like 60 documents. And some, like one of the districts I get to upload, you set at a scanner for an hour, just trying to get ready for a meeting.
Right.
Where the state says, you know, now it's like, get away from that. It's more about the process of making sure we have a continuous, you know, support for the teachers as well as professional development, all for the purpose of making sure students are producing what we're expecting them to do.
Right. All right, thank you.
And then just moving forward, obviously the math score piece and looking at that tutoring grant, that's going to be a large part of the school year and trying to get that off the ground and manage that piece and look at the effectiveness of that. And then we also have the other grant we have is the dual enrollment piece where we started the survey process. So we can work with the community higher ed institutions in regards to figuring out, is there a way for us to offer more in the world of dual enrollment and having students more opportunities for getting college credits or certifications for other careers before they leave the school.
What's HTD again?
That's
HDT?
that's high dose tutoring, right?
Okay, that's the grant,
master.
okay.
Yeah.
What, have we gotten those people yet?
Yeah, so we're at the point of creating kind of the communication, identification of students so we can communicate that to families. And they are in the process of procuring the tutors for us.
Okay, so these will be, so do you hire the tutors?
It's a company, they
Okay.
hire the employees.
Okay,
So the
so
state
they-
worked with companies in Connecticut as well as, you could have done a virtual option, so there's national companies too. But the companies had to be vetted by the state. So the state wanted to see what type of training the tutors had, what type of experience the company had in providing tutors for other school districts. That they would be able to focus on the area of math in the middle schools in 9th grade. So once they went through that process, then we were allowed to use grant funds to procure those tutors, knowing that there's it's difficult to find staff for the
Yeah.
school, so there's no way they can let this grant go out there and say, districts, good luck hiring. So the
Right.
grant money is the 95% of it is going to cover the cost of tutors for the school year.
So just to get straight, so the state is going to provide qualified tutors, then do they become our staff? educators?
staff.
So they're
Oh,
only
so
under
it's
grant.
Totally separate.
Totally separate, they're
Okay.
only under grant funding, so it's just for, as of now, it's just for this school year, so once the
Right.
school year ends.
And we don't have anything to do with the process, the paperwork, it's
Right.
all
The
kind of like an
subcontractor.
outside, a subcontractor coming in.
So they're guaranteed to have a bachelor's degree, to have at least 1 year experience tutoring in the math area of middle school, so algebra.
Mhm.
And to go through a federal background check.
Okay.
So this grant in no way adds staff to the district for future years. Now, we might like the model. and
Oh,
say,
maybe you
let's
find
do this
someone good and
project.
you steal them.
But-
Well, and that's part of the grant. The state also is doing this because they're hoping that it also
Pipeline.
helps the pipeline of teachers. Hey, you're in schools, you're getting experience. You're thinking about getting certified as a teacher. So
Also, they don't have to be certified as a
Not-
teacher.
not a tutor, no. Teachers don't have to be certified.
Really?
But they have to have experience working with students in school.
I think there were 80 something districts that applied and 46 were awarded with the grant.
Awesome.
So,
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Did you finish this?
yes.
I kind of got lost. Any questions on any of this? No, curriculum instructional goal? No? Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Huh?
Go home.
Yeah, really.
I'm so tired.
Who's that? Tracy Allen, right? Yeah, you don't have to stay, Eric. We appreciate it. So Rob, I guess this is you with the HVAC grant application?
Yes, the state of Connecticut came out with another round of HVAC grants. We're obviously in the middle of starting the process for the work for this building, for the core of the building. But there are still two areas of this building, the cafeteria and the gym, which are not covered under the new HVAC work that's taking place. So it's the older system. And then we have an entire building of Quaker Farms that also is without
Take care.
Thanks, Eric.
Connecticut, a high quality HVAC system in that building, no air conditioning in the classroom, so on hot days, we've got to shut down early, like we did earlier in the year. And in any given day, I can have classrooms that don't work properly, and just like we have in this building, we can't get parts for the classroom equipment, we've got to Frankenstein pieces together in order to jury rig to get classrooms going. So I'm asking the board to have a motion this evening that gives me authorization to apply for the HVAC grants for the two remaining portions of this building and for Quaker Farms. The same request just goes to the Board of Selectmen tomorrow evening, at their meeting at 7:30. I need approval from the Board of Education. I also need approval from the town bodies for me to start the process of applying for the grant. What we're looking to do is to use the same consulting firm that wrote the grant and the specs that got us awarded for this building. By doing so, I spoke to other superintendents and other districts that applied for the HVAC grants, and they didn't get awarded. The fact that we used a company to write the specs and that knew how to apply for the HVAC grant got us where we got in this building. We're gonna just repeat that same process for the Quaker Farms project in the two remaining areas of this building. So I've given you a copy of the letter that I would like to send to the Board of Selectmen, which you see in the addenda, and I'm asking for a motion this evening to authorize me to apply for the HVAC grant from the state.
All right, so why don't we make the motion, and then if there's discussion, we can have further discussion.
Motion to grant permission for the superintendent to apply for the HVAC grant for Quaker Farms and the gym and cafeteria at Cove.
Second.
Any discussion, questions for Robert, clarification needed? All good?
Needed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? You may apply.
Thank you.
Okay, now your report, Robert?
Okay, my report, I'm gonna begin by singling you out, Stephanie. Since I joined the district in December 2019, you've been here. You've been with me,
Long for that.
but when I've
Yes.
been here personally,
Yeah.
but as assistant superintendent, and I have truly valued and appreciated the guidance, the support, the friendship, and the collaboration and the partnership that you had through the years with me. There are times that we yelled and screamed at each other, and there's times that we've had very honest, good conversations together. But I believe that through that process, you have made the district better, and you have made me a better administrator, a better assistant superintendent, and a better superintendent. So
That's
well
very nice.
beyond your years as Board of Ed chair, you have devoted and dedicated your life to education and to the kids and the staff of this district here. And I and the district owe you a debt of gratitude for the time and the energy and the passion and the commitment that you've made to this district. So I wanted to thank you.
That's so nice. Thank you for saying that. And, you know, the feeling's mutual. So I'll do my report now too, working with all you guys and, you know, we're, you know, here for the kids and for the district and made amazing strides and hired amazing people. So, I know y'all carry on and you all know how to get in touch with me too. So.
You know how to find me.
Can we just take a moment? Oh,
Yes.
sure. Is that the end of your report? Do you have other stuff?
I have a few more quick updates, but let's celebrate you first.
Oh, that's nice. That's so nice. Thank you.
Geez, stuff, I'm gonna miss you as my son.
I could still be your sounding board then.
Somebody has the card.
Nicole, I do.
Oh, God.
Just making sure it's all buttoned up.
Oh, this is so nice, you guys.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do this.
So on behalf of all of us, you've worked really, really hard on a certain project. So, so this will be.
Should I open it now?
Yes.
Yes.
So this will be something.
Begins with an S.
Yes.
Sure, man. Oh, that is so nice. You know, you're gonna make me cry. Education, the playground for learning, Stephanie Miller, teacher, assistant principal, BOE chair, 19 to 23. So this is going near the swings.
It is.
Ah, that's so sweet. Can I hug you all? I don't know, but I'll just hug you for now. Thank you so much. And oh my God, those swings meant, I don't know why, but they meant so much to me. So I'm glad. Thank you. These are beautiful.
Is everything spelled correctly on the flag?
I would. Yes.
So the word principal, trying to see if you could get it.
The principal is your pal, so that's how you know it's PAL and not PLE.
So there was a little joke in there, Steve, I'll let you tell
Yeah,
it.
we were gonna make a little
Make it-
look-alike label over the word and make it- just to see, just to get through a little bit.
Would probably say, oh, that's.
So there's,
All right, let's start twitching.
Yeah. Thank you
so
so much.
in the card,
So
there's
much.
one other thing we would like you to do. We got you a gift certificate for Barnes and Noble.
Oh,
We would love for you to, since reading is so important for our kids,
Mhm.
to pick out some books to donate to the libraries for the
that's
kids with
so
dedication
nice.
from you.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we so appreciate.
The town
everything.
library?
Our school libraries.
Oh, okay.
So probably a book or two for each library.
Absolutely. Oh, I'll have so much fun doing that.
So we wanted you to be able to pick what you felt that you wanted to say to the kids.
That's so nice. And again, thank you. You guys are the best.
Love you.
Congratulations.
So
Be a
nice.
stranger in there.
Oh, I won't. I won't be, I'll especially meet you for a BEER at the tavern. So.
Sorry.
Very nice.
No, that's okay. That's, I wanted to start this by.
Yeah, thank you so much.
A couple more quick updates. We had discussed during my goal presentation of implementing a school climate leadership type of a survey. I spent the last couple of months vetting several different solutions out there through discussions with my cabinet and also discussions with the OEA. We've selected a survey. It's called Wellbe. It's out of the UK. It's geared directly at school climate and leadership to create action plans to improve the school climate within schools. So we have our kickoff meeting tomorrow morning, have IT and my admin assistant joining me to begin having the conversation of getting the data prep so that we can begin rolling this out in the next couple weeks for staff. The goal would be to do this at a minimum now and end of the year and most likely sometime in the middle of the school year as well. To get an initial baseline in the year, and next year probably we would start it earlier in the year, not in December. Along with it is opportunities for professional learning within their system, guided toward leadership for leaders in the district, self-assessment surveys. There's a whole body of work, and that they also provide consultation with the district leadership and the school leadership to really make meaning of the data that we're gathering in order to make improvements in schools. I want to thank Pam Aldrich, who's not here this evening, and a number of teachers, also Deb, and dozens of students that came Friday night to the Military Veterans Day celebration. There were two sittings for families and and the veterans. It was well attended. As I walked the room, the joy that the veterans had and the families had of just being able to sit down and having a meal together.
That's nice.
And not having to worry about cooking and cleaning and just enjoying each other's company, and some were doing it with friends and some with their families. It was just a beautiful evening, and there were cards and there were artwork up. We had music up from high school. And as I said, dozens of students were there. The food was donated, but they warmed the food, they prepared, and on the plates, they delivered it. It was a well-oiled machine, and Pam Aldridge put hours and hours of work in putting it together, and we had a number of other teachers there, Bethany Campbell, Dave Becca, Jennifer Crooks, all providing support through the evening. So it was just a great night. So I want to thank them all for all the efforts in making that happen. And this is the first year we've done this, but I think I can see us doing it again. In the
Awesome.
future is very successful.
Can I just throw in that it was great to see that every school participated.
Oh, good.
On the tables, there were cards done from Quaker Farms.
Very nice.
There was pictures on the wall. It was just really great how everybody came together and worked to honor the veterans. So it was a great night. So.
Speaking of being recognized, I put out a press release. I know I said it in my newsletters, but also highlighting at the board level, congratulations to the Great Oak staff and students and parents for being named a school distinction by the state of Connecticut 2 years in a row. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens from hard work and commitment by the teachers, administrators, students, and staff, and really driving forward and really being devoted to academic success within the school, not just one area, but in a number of areas, and just a whole focus on improvement. 2 years in a row is something for the district and our community very proud of. I know I'm very proud of the success that our staff and students and teachers had. Our staff was able to celebrate on PD Day last week with a cake in celebration, and again, just a heartfelt congratulations for everyone that involved Red Oak for that success.
Absolutely.
Reminder to the community that tomorrow night at Town Hall, 7 p.m. is the town meeting. It's the vote to allocate the money for the HVAC project for this building. This is an essential vote. In order for this project to start, the town needs to approve the funds for this project. If it gets approved tomorrow night, the contract will be signed tomorrow night, and the work will be set to begin in December, and it'll be completed in time for the deadline of the state for the Eversource grant late fall, and the state required the project to be done by December 31st, 2024. So it's essential that we get people to this meeting to vote yes to support this HVAC project. I just sent an email out to all parents in the community this morning. Social media reminder again tomorrow, but we need people to go out in support of the funding for this project, because as we talked about earlier, we have 2 other areas of this building, and we have Quaker Farms that needs the work, and we have funding that the state has committed to us, but we need the local funding to complement what the state is providing to us.
Just to follow up, just make sure you call out the location, because I had different people thinking it was in different locations. But because they call out Great Oaks. Some people think it's at that location. The vote is not.
It's
gonna
at
be
Town Hall. It's at Town
So
Hall.
I'm just make sure we call out the
Oh,
location.
I thought it was in there, but I.
No, I'm saying I've received other emails from other bodies and
Okay.
just in case there's any miscommunication.
Okay, it's a Town Hall, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then finally, we are entering the month of performances. And we have the fall play taking place on November 30th, which is opening night, and then December 1st and 2nd. They are forming a play called The Nerd. So you will
That's the
see
high school?
the high school. So that's the first of the upcoming performances coming up. I'll have a list of performances in my Friday newsletter to the community as a reminder to everybody where the dates are. But I do want to highlight that the performance season is upon us. So start marking your calendars, and the kids love to see an audience, in the room, so let's, support them.
Absolutely. Is that it?
That's it.
All right, I already did my report, thanking you guys, so I won't bore you with anything else. Subcommittee reports, Joe's not here, but is anybody on facilities? That is on facilities that needs to report anything?
I haven't heard anything from Joe, but.
Okay,
So
so
I think we're,
I don't-
I think good shape
I'm
to
trying to
meet
think.
tomorrow.
what's even on our, trying to think what's on our list. Is there anything on our list that needs to be?
The major thing is that we've developed a matrix that we had showed you at this joint meeting last week on the work taking place at the middle school, and we're continuing to work with the vendors on making sure that those milestones get hit appropriately. And the problem is, as we've said, every time you fix one thing, it uncovers more stuff. So it's a work in progress.
Was there any further information on the light fixtures down here and, that caused that issue? I mean, has everything been upgraded and taken care of?
Yeah, in
and-
fact, immediately after we identified what the cause was of the light fixture going bad, we identified the other areas in the district that had similar type light fixtures. We shut those areas down immediately.
Mhm.
And so we had an electrician out to assess whether or not they were in safe working order, which we did within 3 school days of having it shut down, verified, and then back in operation after that.
That's nothing else on facilities that's on our
No,
radar.
just the
Middle school and
Middle
HVAC.
Right.
The playground is
At Q-
99%, the new playground at the farms.
Yeah.
That was installed last week. The final piece is to add the rest of the mulch to it, which is taking place this week, and the project will be completed.
I heard a lot of great comments
Oh,
from
good.
parents, when they came to vote about the playground. They were
Good.
thrilled
Oh,
to
good.
see it.
Excellent.
Kids should have fun. Deb, curriculum,
We have to get a meeting.
got all of our
Yeah, right.
information.
But we have to schedule a meeting.
Sure. Nicole, policy?
Yeah, so we have one policy down for second read, it's the administration of student medications in schools. It's a model policy from Shipman and Goodwin that we vetted with our medical director in town. He went over everything and he recommends that we approve it as written.
Is it in here?
I'm just noticing that it was not attached to the agenda item. It's in the previous meeting, though.
Yeah, it was in the last meeting for the first read. I have a copy here if anyone needs it right at the moment. I have a hard copy, but.
So that would be
December,
October
November,
24th.
yeah, 24th or 26th.
after 24.
Good minutes.
Does anybody want time to
No,
No,
look at
I've
that?
read it.
I think
Okay,
as long as our medical director has vetted it and our council has, I think we should be
The
fine.
policy came from council, and the medical director reviewed it after that.
okay. So do you want to do a motion? or-
So I make a motion that we approve the administration of student medications in schools as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Motion carries.
And we have another meeting scheduled for Thursday at 6 p.m.
And so you're kind of organized with going through certain sections of trying to update and.
Shipman and Goodwin is great because they highlight the big changes and they give us, they help us prioritize what needs to be done. And then we backfill by going ahead and reviewing the policies and seeing what we think needs to be updated as we can.
Okay, it's a huge undertaking. Mike, finance
Next meeting is currently scheduled at 11:21.
and any liaison reports?
PTO meeting is Thursday.
Okay.
And I attended the Booster Club meeting last week, and they're planning for the Festival of Trees, and the theme is Old Town Oxford, and Pam Aldridge is really helping a lot of the.
Old
Old Town Oxford.
Oxford. Well, that's Pam's middle name. She's Old Time Oxford. You can tell her I said that. I'll tell her I said.
And we
So odd.
have a
Yeah.
Thanksgiving football game next week. And the Booster Club has been looking for help with parents to support the concession stand because we're expecting a lot of people
Mhm.
in attendance for that game.
And we're having the Taj Mahal of porta potties, right?
Yes.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
That's what's most important. So I think at this point, we are going into executive session. So,
So I hereby move that the board enter into executive session for the purpose of consideration of written attorney-client privilege communications regarding proposed solar energy memorandum of understanding and performance contract and potential waiver of attorney-client privilege and disclosure to town officials of same, and I further
Thank you.
move to invite Dr. Miller.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Second.
Bye, good night.
So you second, we invited Dr. Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? So we are in